Hello, everyone, and welcome to the virtual public scoping meeting for the Newtown Creek Combined Sewer Overflow Storage Tunnel Project Draft Scope of Work. We'll get started shortly. The time is 7:02 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time, and we'll now start the public scoping meeting. Welcome. My name is Terrell Estison, and on behalf of the New York City Department of Environmental Protection, or DEP, I'd like to welcome you to the virtual public scoping meeting for the Newtown Creek Combined Sewer Overflow Storage Tunnel Project. I serve as the Director for Wastewater Review and Special Projects for DEP's Bureau of Environmental Planning and Analysis. DEP is the lead agency for this project. I'll be the moderator for this public scoping meeting. Thank you for joining us. I'd also like to thank the many DEP people and consultants who have helped organize and who are helping to run tonight's meeting. Next slide. The scoping portion of this meeting is being recorded. If you do not wish to be part of a recorded meeting, please go ahead and disconnect. The recording will be posted on the project website, which can be found on DEP's webpage or can be accessed using the link provided in the chat. First, I'd like to briefly present the agenda for this meeting. After the welcome and agenda, we will go over Zoom logistics. Next, we will provide a high-level overview of the City Environmental Quality Review, or SEQR, process. We will then provide a general overview of the Newtown Creek Combined Sewer Overflow Storage Tunnel Project, and then review the project's draft scope of work. After that, we will have the public comment session when members of the public will have the opportunity to share comments on the draft scope of work for the record. After the formal public comments have been received tonight, we will also be having an informal project Q&A session. The Q&A session will not be recorded and will begin after the presentation and formal public comment session is closed. We will be taking your general questions on the project, and our technical team members will provide responses. The Q&A is an informal session, and any questions received during the informal session will not be transcribed or included as a formal public comment on the draft scope of work. So after we get through the presentation and the formal public comments, we invite you to stick around if you have general questions on the project. We want to receive everyone's comments on the draft scope of work and still have time for an engaging Q&A session. We have estimated times shown on the slide. If there are well more than an hour's worth of speakers, we will take speakers until around 8:30 and then move to the Q&A after a short pause. But if speakers finish ahead of 8:30, we will take a pause and resume with the Q&A after 5 minutes. We anticipate the Q&A to last up to an hour. Next slide. I'm going to suggest a few tips on how to best participate in this virtual meeting. I know many of you are familiar with Zoom, but I'll briefly review a few tips to help you navigate the meeting today. If you have any issues with Zoom during the meeting, we have a technical support person available to assist you. You can reach her, Kelsey Kahn, by email at kelsey.n.kahn@imegcorp.com or call her at 917-994-8255. You can also use the chat feature if you need technical help with Zoom. If you are disconnected at any point during this meeting or are having bandwidth issues with your internet, there's an option to telephone into the meeting. You can use the toll-free number on your screen to access the meeting if you are disconnected, or if joining via phone is simply a better option for you. That number is 646-558-8656. If you telephone in, you will need to enter a meeting ID, which is 849-7888-3095. This is a Zoom webinar as opposed to a Zoom meeting. It's slightly different than some more informal Zoom meetings you may have participated in. To preserve bandwidth and have a smoother virtual meeting experience, you may want to close other programs that are running on your computer. Today, all participants are placed on mute until the formal public comment period listening session. If you have raised your hand to speak, we will call on you individually and allow you to unmute yourself during the public comment listening session. You will then be able to share comments verbally. Zoom is generating closed captions for this meeting that should be showing up at the bottom of your screen. If you are seeing them and want to turn them off, or if you are not seeing them and want to turn them on, you can do so by clicking the button in your Zoom toolbar that says Show Captions or CC. Next slide. The most important aspect of tonight's meeting is getting your comments on the draft scope of work. There are multiple ways to provide your comments as listed on the slide and in the chat. You can provide oral comments at tonight's meeting, provide comments via email to nctunneleis@dep.nyc.gov, by mailing written comments to David Lee, Senior Project Manager, New York City DEP, Bureau of Environmental Planning and Analysis, 5917 Junction Boulevard, 11th floor, Flushing, New York, 11373. Or, if you prefer to submit your comments electronically, there's an online comment form. These are the official ways to comment on this project. Note that comments will not be accepted via the Zoom chat or during the informal Q&A session. Also, please note that representatives of the media can direct media inquiries to DEP Press Office at dep.nyc.gov. All verbal scoping comments provided today will be recorded, transcribed by a stenographer, entered into the project record, and may also be publicly posted. We will not respond during the formal scoping comment listening session. Responses to oral comments that we received today will be provided as part of the final scope of work. The public comment period will be open through April 11, 2025. Official written comments received on the draft scope of work will be made part of the project record. All comments received by April 11th will be given the same consideration as those received tonight. Next slide. City Environmental Quality Review, or SEQR, is a process whereby New York City agencies consider and disclose the potential for a project to result in significant adverse impacts on the environment. When there could be an impact, an environmental impact statement, or EIS, is prepared to inform decision makers about the potential impacts as well as alternatives and mitigation. This public meeting is being held pursuant to the State Environmental Quality Review Act under Article 8 of the New York State Environmental Conservation Law and its implementing regulations in Title VI of the New York Code's Rules and Regulations, Part 617, as well as pursuant to City Environmental Quality Review as set forth in Mayoral Executive Order 91 of 1977 as amended, and Title 62 of the Rules of the City of New York, Chapter 5. Next slide. With that, I will turn it over to Kate Eden, Accountable Manager with the Bureau of Engineering Design and Construction to present an overview of the Newtown Creek Combined Sewer Overflow Storage Tunnel Project.
Thanks, Terrell. I'm Kate Etten. I am with the Bureau of Engineering, Design, and Construction, and I'm going to give you an overview of this project. This project is located along Newtown Creek. Newtown Creek marks the border between Brooklyn and Queens. It's known for being one of the most polluted waterways in the city, due mostly to the number of chemical spills that have occurred in the area, but also due to the volume of CSO, or combined sewer overflow, that enters the creek. Next slide. In 2010, Newtown Creek was designated a federal Superfund site with 6 potentially responsible parties named, including the City of New York. Next slide. Newtown Creek drainage area includes 2 collection systems for the combined stormwater and sanitary flow. These are Newtown Creek and Bowery Bay wastewater resource recovery facilities. You can see the limits of these areas on this plan shown. Next slide. So combined sewer overflow, or CSO, is something that occurs with a combined sewer system, as New York City has. With this system, our stormwater enters the same pipes as the sewage from our buildings. And when we get rainfall, the stormwater will overwhelm our sewer system, and the combined effluent will overflow at outfalls to receiving waterways. Next slide. So under the Combined Sewer Overflow, or CSO, consent order with New York State DEC, DEP prepared long-term control plans, or LTCPs, for each water body to determine the best solution for controlling CSO discharges to meet water quality goals. For Newtown Creek, 2 projects were proposed to reduce the flow from the 4 highest volume outfalls. The first is to construct a 39 million gallon tunnel to collect flow from 3 of the outfalls, store the flow during a rain event, and then pump the flow via a new tunnel dewatering pump station to the Newtown Creek plant. The second project was to expand the Borden Avenue pump station to be able to send flow from outfall BB26, the 4th outfall, directly to the Newtown Creek plant. During design, DEP concluded that adding the BB26 flow to the tunnel would be a more efficient solution than pumping the flow from BB26 separately to the Newtown Creek plant. To accommodate the additional flow, we proposed expanding the tunnel to 50 million gallons. It was 40 million gallons. The DEC approved this modification of the project in December of 2024. Next slide. So this project will include work at multiple project sites to construct the different components associated with the CSO storage tunnel. The brown shaded area on the plan here, adjacent to Whale Creek, is where we'll be siting the tunnel dewatering pump station. This site will include ancillary structures such as odor control and screening facilities. This site will also function as the base for tunnel excavation and soil handling. At each of the outfall sites, shown here in red, we'll be constructing new diversion structures and a drop shaft to send flow to the tunnel. Or in the case of BB26, a conduit to send the flow to a drop shaft closer to the tunnel. Next slide. Here's a schematic overview of the current CSO tunnel system. The head of the tunnel begins at NCB 15 drop shaft. That's at the sort of the bottom of the screen, and continues along, picking up flow from each of the other drop shafts, culminating at the tunnel dewatering pump station, shown here in orange. The tunnel will fill during a storm event and later be pumped out, with the flow being treated at the nearby Newtown Creek wastewater resource recovery facility. I'll now turn it back over to Terrell, who will walk through additional information on the EIS process.
Thank you, Kate. Next slide, please. The project requires land use approvals for site selection and property acquisition through the Uniform Land Use Review Process, or ULURP. The acquisitions include subterranean easements for the tunnel, as well as several surface acquisitions for diversion facilities and/or to facilitate construction. Next slide. In seeker, an environmental impact statement, or EIS, is prepared when there could be a potential significant adverse impact. The EIS includes analyses to take a hard look at the potential for impacts, and when there could be an impact, includes discussion of mitigation or alternatives to inform decision makers about the environmental, social, and economic considerations of the project. The EIS will look at both the construction and operation of the proposed CSO tunnel. Next slide. The EIS is a phased process, starting with the draft scope of work that describes the approach and methodology to assess the potential impacts of the proposed project. The draft scope of work for this project was issued on February 5th, 2025, and was noticed in the City Record, New York Daily News, and Environmental Notice Bulletin, as well as being posted on our website and Seeker Access under Seeker number 24 DEP 053Y. We are in a public comment period to receive feedback on the draft scope of work. Later, a final scope of work will be issued incorporating and/or responding to comments received. The final scope of work will be the basis for the draft EIS. The EIS itself is also phased, with the draft EIS being published, followed by a comment period and public hearing, and then the issuance of a final EIS. The EIS will be conducted consistent with the methodologies and impact criteria outlined in the 2021 Seeker Technical Manual. The Seeker Technical Manual provides guidance on how to assess the potential for impacts on the categories shown on the screen. To briefly highlight a few of those areas, the Land Use, Zoning, and Public Policy chapter will consider the compatibility of the proposed project with existing and potential future patterns of development and zoning. Consistency with the New York City Waterfront Revitalization Program will also be assessed. The Socioeconomic Conditions chapter will look at direct and indirect displacement from the project. The Historic and Cultural Resources chapter will involve consultation with the New York City Landmarks Preservation Commission and the New York State Historic Preservation Office. Documentation regarding potential historic resources and archaeological sensitivity will be prepared, and any measures necessary to mitigate or reduce potential adverse impacts will be identified in the EIS. Natural resources will involve identification of existing resources based on site reconnaissance, review of existing information, and consultation with state and federal agencies. Potential impacts to ecological communities will be assessed, and potential impacts to aquatic resources will be described. Hazardous materials will describe the historic uses of the project sites, the current regulatory framework, and will summarize investigations already completed or to be completed to identify measures to avoid impacts on human health and the environment. The transportation, air quality, and noise chapters will analyze the effects of construction as well as the operation of the facilities. The EIS will also include a detailed project description, an alternatives discussion, and summary chapters. An environmental justice chapter will be included and will be informed by the recent New York State Department of Environmental Conservation guidance and updates to that guidance as it becomes available. Next slide. Here you can see the planned schedule for the EIS. The draft scope of work was issued on February 5th, and tonight is the public scoping meeting. The public comment period for the scope will close on April 11th, 2025. We anticipate releasing the draft environmental impact statement in September 2025 and the final environmental impact statement around February 2026. Next slide. As a reminder, you can provide comments on the draft scope of work by providing verbal comments tonight, by emailing or by mailing written comments to the New York City Department of Environmental Protection at the addresses provided on this slide and in the chat, or by using the online comment form listed on the slide and in the chat. These are the only official ways to provide comments on the draft scope of work. Comments will not be accepted via the Zoom chat or during the informal Q&A session. Comments must be received or postmarked no later than April 11th, 2025. Next slide. We will now begin our public comment listening session. If any elected officials or their representatives wish to make a comment, they are given the courtesy of making untimed comments at the beginning of the comment session. There is an option when you registered for this meeting to indicate your desire to share your comments with the public. Following elected officials, we will start by calling on those who pre-registered to comment in the order that they registered. Members of the public will have 3 minutes to speak. If you are registered to speak after 7 p.m. or have not registered to speak but decide you would like to make a formal comment during this session, you may raise your hand and we will add your name to the end of the list. I will be calling the speakers in groups of 5. We will post the names of the next group of 5 speakers in the chat. Please turn the chat function on so you can see when your turn is coming up. You can access the chat by clicking on the chat button in your Zoom toolbar. In addition to putting the speakers' names in the chat, I will call out names for those on the phone. I'll do my best with pronunciation, and I apologize in advance for any mistakes in that regard. When you hear your name or see your name coming up in the speaker list posted in the chat, please raise your hand by clicking on the raise hand button in the Zoom toolbar so we can better identify you and allow you to unmute. If you are calling in by phone, you can press *9 to raise your hand and we'll be able to call on you. If you're not seeing the raise hand in your Zoom toolbar, you may need to click on the participants in your Zoom toolbar and the button will show up at the bottom of the window in the participants pane. When your turn comes up, I will announce your name and our technical host will request that you unmute yourself. You should receive a pop-up invitation to unmute your line. Please click unmute before you begin speaking. When unmuted, please state and spell your first and last name, as well as your affiliation before beginning your comment. Each public speaker will have 3 minutes for their comment, and a timer will be shown on the screen. We ask that speakers please keep their comments to 3 minutes, and if they have additional comments, to submit them in writing using the options described earlier. Please be mindful of the time so that everyone has an opportunity to speak. I will ask you to wrap things up at the 3-minute mark. I'd also like to remind you that this portion of tonight's meeting is a public comment listening session where we will not individually respond to questions, but we will consider them and incorporate them into the final scope of work and EIS. We also ask that comments be made in a respectful manner, acknowledging that this is a public forum meant to be useful for everybody. Let's get started. By now, you should be seeing the list of the first 5 speakers in the chat. And they are Lincoln Ressler, Dan Wiley, Michael Dulong, Laura Hoffman, and Willis Elkins. Please raise your hand if you see your name, and we will allow you to unmute yourself. First up is Lincoln Ressler.
Great. Well, thank you very much. My name is Lincoln Ressler. I have the privilege of being a council member on the Greenpoint side of Newtown Creek. And I primarily wanted to say first and foremost, thank you to DEP for taking the initiative here to identify better solutions for the long-term control plan for Newtown Creek. At similar cost, on a similar time frame, we are going to achieve 40 million fewer gallons of poop, combined sewage overflow going into Newtown Creek every year. And we're also going to achieve 100 million fewer, especially by Bushwick Inlet Park. And Willis and others have pointed out to me when I came into the council that we're putting hundreds of millions of dollars into building this world-class, phenomenal new park eventually at Bushwick Inlet Park. And we've done nothing to mitigate the CSO outflow at that location. We have a better solution. I think there will also be less negative construction impacts in our community as the work on Greenpoint Avenue will be diverted. Uh, all in all, I think that this is a good plan. We've received commitments from DEP leadership that there will be new green infrastructure investments in our community as well. We're already working on multiple great green infrastructure projects in the community, like the Karen Asphalt Lot and others. And we're really excited to identify even more opportunities to strengthen green infrastructure and resiliency in our waterfront community. I'm just very pleased that the DEP has put forward this smart plan, and DC has been supportive, and hope the community will be as well, because I think that this is a positive thing for the Greenpoint community. It's not perfect, but this is a very positive step forward.
Thank you very much, Council Member. Our next speaker is Dan Wiley. Raise your hand to speak,
Great.
and when you're off mute, please state and spell your first and last name. Thank you.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Dan
Yeah.
Wiley. Dan Wiley, Wiley, DAN, first name. District Director for Congresswoman Nydia Velasquez, who has all of Newtown Creek and a bunch of other Superfund sites in her district, and both sides, Brooklyn and Queens. On behalf of Congresswoman Velasquez, I want to thank New York City DEP for engaging with us proactively in reducing CSO impacts in the area. And the Congressman also was able to secure community project funding for specific projects that Councilman Lincoln Ressler has allocated money for in Gateway to Greenpoint near your facility to help address CSOs, and also got more authorizations in the Water Resource Development Act to address with environmental infrastructure dealing with CSOs. So glad to see DEP on their own accord doing more to reduce CSOs than they had in their initial plan without having to be required by EPA in its Superfund analysis of its control plan. So this is going above what they were originally going to do by increasing the capacity of the tunnel. And also tonight is Bushwick Inlet Park. They have a resiliency meeting tonight, coincidentally, but glad to see that we're not just shunting over more CSOs onto the Brooklyn side with this modification to actually take care of the problem and reduce CSOs overall. So that is an improvement over the original plan, in our opinion. We also would like to see more green infrastructure projects and projects to mitigate flooding at the surface on the Queens side. And I want to also thank New York State DEP for doing a couple of weeks ago a walkthrough with the Blissville Neighborhood Association to pinpoint problem areas and work constructively on doing an analysis to figure out how we can address those in the interim while a longer solution for the control plan is being implemented over a longer period of time. And I also want to acknowledge that there's a lot of challenges with this new administration, but administrations come and go, and over the long term, we continue to work on climate resiliency, and environmental justice, regardless of the whims of a current office holder. So I'll leave it at that from Congresswoman Nadia Velázquez. Looking forward to hearing comments from community stakeholders on both sides of Newtown Creek and how, with this increase of tunnel capacity, how we could actually even do more to mitigate flooding and CSOs in the interim and in the long term, since this is a big investment of money and property to get this thing done. So thank you so much.
And thank you, Dan Wiley. Our next speaker is Michael Dulong. Raise your hand so you can unmute yourself when you're off mute. Please state and spell your first and last name and note if you're representing an organization.
Hi, good evening. My name is Mike Dulong. It's MikeDulong, and I'm a legal program director for Hudson Riverkeeper. We protect and restore the Hudson River from source to sea, which includes all of the saline waters throughout New York City. And we safeguard drinking water supplies through advocacy rooted in community partnerships, science, and law. I want to thank DEP for hosting this meeting and for soliciting input from the community on the local impacts that this project will have. We fully support the tunnel project, and we're looking forward to a cleaner Newtown Creek in the future. This is one of the most important projects for New York City's water quality overall. It's one of the most important sewage and stormwater projects, and it's one of the most important projects for the Superfund site. So we're looking forward to seeing it done as soon as DEP can get it done. Now, we would hope, and of course, as we have asked all along, we would like you to consider alternatives for a tunnel project that will capture even more than 65% of the raw sewage and polluted stormwater being discharged to the creek. So with that, we reserve the right to submit further comments in writing, and we look forward to seeing this project move along. Thank you.
Thank you, Michael. Our next speaker is Laura Hoffman. Please raise your hand, and when you come off mute, state and spell your first and last name, and note if you're representing an organization.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm Laura Hoffman, Laura, capital HOFMANN. I'm a CAG member, and I belong to practically every Newtown Creek related organization that there is. I very happy, of course, that this project is in the works. I support, the Newtown Creek Alliance and also Riverkeeper and their comments. And I just want to, reiterate what, they're saying, that, we'd like even more protection and even more work done to prevent flooding. A large part of the community is really impacted by all sorts of flooding, whether it's the quick rainfalls or or just weather events and so forth. And also, I want to put out there, as somebody who's lived in the community all their life, that whatever work is done, that it will be done mindful of the impacts that it is having on the community. Any type of impact, be it dust or whatever, I hope that the agency will find a way to work closely with the community and, collect their comments all through the process. That's all.
Thank you, Laura. Our next registered speaker is Willis Elkins. If Willis can raise your hand and unmute if you're possibly under another name, we'll try and bring you in.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes. Is this Willis?
Yeah, sorry. I think the
Welcome.
name's under my coworker. No problem.
Okay.
So, my name is Willis Elkins. That's Williselkins. I'm the executive director of the Newtown Creek Alliance. And we will be submitting our full comments after the meeting. But just want to reiterate a lot of what the previous speakers have said. We've been, long-term advocates, Newtown Creek Alliance, founded in 2002 for serious improvements to water quality in this water body. It's been heavily polluted for 170 years at this point, and reducing sewage overflow is a major component of that. So we want to thank DEP for getting us to this stage in the process. Long-term control plan is very important to the health of the communities around us. So what I want to say real briefly is that just as the council member and Dan Wiley from the Congresswoman Velasquez's office stated, there's also a lot of opportunity to not just do this critical reduction in sewage overflow, but also to utilize this project to bring more benefits in regards of green infrastructure, public space, public realm improvements around the creek to the surrounding communities. We also want to acknowledge that this is a fantastic start to addressing water quality issues and sewage overflow. We want to also ensure that there's ways to continue to build on this and make sure we can get as close to 100% reduction of sewage as possible. With that, I'll yield my time and look forward to submitting our full comments before the deadline.
Thank you, Willis. Our next 5 registered speakers are in the comments. They are Phil Wong, M. Ruby, Thomas Matuzis, Peter Malinowski, and Antonio DeLeon. Phil Wong, if you could raise your hand and look to come off mute. I don't see a respondent for Phil. We can come back. Is M. Ruby here? Could you raise your hand? Second call for M. Ruby. I'm not seeing any hands. The next registered speaker, Thomas Matuzis. Okay, we can move to, and we will come back and do a second call for Phil and M and Thomas. Is Peter Malinowski here? If you are, could you raise your hand? I see it. And then when you come off mute, if you could state and spell your first name and note if you're representing an organization.
Yes, hi, my name is Peter Malinowski. It's PeterMalinowski, and I'm representing Billion Oyster Project. Billion Oyster Project is a nonprofit. We work throughout New York City to restore oyster reefs through public education initiatives. We believe that everyone in New York City has a right to a clean, accessible, and abundant harbor. I'm echoing the earlier comments just to say that I commend DEP for taking this step and working to reduce CSOs in the creek or anywhere else by any amount. That's wonderful, and thank you for doing that. I also just want to also encourage continued work towards 100% CSO reduction throughout the harbor. And I think there are other opportunities to do that. And the creek, of course, while it is, as was noted earlier, one of the most polluted waterways in the city, it's also home to all kinds of wading birds and an incredible natural ecosystem, oysters and mussels and lots of animals. So we're talking about a really interesting and abundant ecosystem that still, after this project is done, will have to absorb 377 million gallons of untreated CSOs every year. So I commend DP for what they're doing. Thank you very much. Thank you for this opportunity to comment, and we're going to submit our written comments after the meeting. And with that, I'll yield back my time. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. The next registered speaker is Antonio DeLeon. Is Antonio here? Antonio, can you come off mute? Antonio, you should get invited to unmute. Okay, we'll move back up. I see a message from M. Ruby and a hand up. If M. Ruby can come off mute. M, are you there?
Hi, yes, sorry. I just got ability to go off mute.
Okay.
So thank you so much for having me here today. My name is M. Ruby. I work with Riverkeeper. We've long worked with around issues to improve water quality in Newtown Creek. And I just want to say that we fully support this project and that we appreciate the Department of Environmental Protection for hosting this meeting to allow an opportunity for the public to understand the ongoing project and to raise concerns about the local impacts that it will have on the different communities around the creek. So thank you so much, and my apologies for being a little bit late. Thank you.
Not a problem. Thank you. I want to come back to see if Antonio is available, and if you are able to come off mute. I see the name in the attendees list, but it appears to still be muted. If you're able to raise your hand, maybe we can get you unmuted. Antonio, if you're having trouble, you can text in chat for tech support, and hopefully we can hear you. There's a reminder that there are multiple ways to comment, but we are interested in hearing from you. I'd also like to go back and see if either Phil Wong or Thomas Matuzas are here. If so, if you could raise your hand. Okay, moving on. I see Christina Hatcher in the chat.
Yes.
Okay. Welcome, Christina. Can you state and spell your first and last name and state if you're representing an organization?
My I spell my first and last name and the organization? My name is spelled Kristina. Last name Hatcher. And the organization that I'm with is John Jay College of Criminal Justice. I think that's it. Those were the answers to the question. Yes.
Yes, we just want to make sure that you're recorded. And now we're interested in what you have to say about the project.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Christina, you're back on mute.
Oh. So you're asking me about questions about the project?
If you have any comments on the projects, on the draft scope of work or on the project itself, this is a chance to make a public comment.
No, not right now. Can we circle back to me?
We can.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Okay. Okay, do we have more registered speakers? Okay, it looks like we don't have any more registered speakers. I want to go back, try another call for Phil Wong. Or Thomas Matuzis. And if not seeing them, Antonio DeLeon. Antonio, can you raise your hand? I see you in the attendance. If you raise your hand, we should be able to get you off mute. You may have the raised hand button on the bottom of your screen or under the participants list. Okay. We will move on. Antonio, there are multiple ways to send comments. And at this point, I'd like to see if there are any other speakers who wish to share a public scoping comment. If so, could you raise your hand and we will add you to the speaker list. If you're calling in by phone, you can press *9 to raise your hand and we'll be able to add you to the list. Okay, making a last call. If there's anyone else who'd like to provide comments, please raise your hand if you'd like to provide a comment. At this point, I do not see any additional speakers who would like to provide public comments. With that, I officially close the public comment listening session. The time is 7:49 Eastern Daylight Time. Thank you all for your comments. We'll end the recording at this time. We'll now take a brief 5-minute break before we start the informal Q&A session. If you have general questions about the project and would like to stick around, we encourage you to do so. After the 5-minute break, we will come back and ask people who have questions to raise their hands using the Zoom function. The technical host will allow you to come off mute to ask your question, and then our project team will provide an answer. I encourage you not to close out your Zoom. Just stay with us and we'll be back in 5 minutes to initiate the informal Q&A portion of the meeting. Thank you very much. It is currently 7:50 p.m. So we will see you back here in 5 minutes at 7:55 p.m. Thank you.